It's not enough to win a war, it's more important to organize the peace. It is the second half of the 8th century BCE, and the European theater is really coming to life. Around 753 BCE, Rome is founded, and its inhabitants do not wait for an invitation before they start to explore the possibilities of expanding the city's regional influence. At first, this area of influence, with Rome at its center, is limited to that of a city-state. 10 years onwards, in 743 BCE, two other city-states on a small peninsula in Greece are fighting over the same available fertile land. The city of Sparta has decided that the region then owned by the Messenians is to become theirs. After a period of conflict which lasted for several years, it is the Spartans in 724 BCE who become the victors and claim about half the land of the peninsula known as the Peloponnese. With local skirmishes stirring in both Italy and Greece, it is within the latter of the two countries that a more wide-scale conflict starts to arise within this same time period. This conflict is known as the Lelantine War, and it was mainly fought between the city-states of Chalcis and Eretria, who were both situated on the island of Euboea. The exact period in which these conflicts took place is unknown, but it must have been somewhere between the end of the 8th century BCE and the first half of the 7th century BCE. In the beginning, it seemed that both city-states were on good terms with each other. It is even believed that around the year 750 BCE, inhabitants from both cities had their share in the joint founding of the city of Cuma. This city was located within Italy, as it was quite common for Greek settlers in the 8th century BCE to raise new settlements outside of Greece. These settlements were established along the coastlines of the southern European mainland and the northern countries of the African continent. This resettling of Greek inhabitants was caused by the vast population growth in Greece, which left its people in search for other habitable places. This specific area in Italy was a popular place where the Greek people would end up leaving a long-lasting imprint on the Italian countryside. It is the aforementioned steep rise of the Greek population which might have also started the conflict between Chalcis and Eretria. Not everyone was moving away from their birthplace in search for new challenges. This meant that the available fertile land for each city-state was quickly becoming unable to sustain the local people. Acquiring new land by force was therefore one of the last remaining options. The mainland of Greece at this time has a number of prominent city-states, from which most of them will choose a side during the Lelantine War. These other city-states will also get involved in skirmishes of their own making, thus creating a period of unrest across the ancient Greek world. It was now a common sight to see the larger city-states fighting with each other over the available fertile farming land. For Chalcis and Eretria, it was the Lelantine plain, which was situated in between them, but had only enough resources on offer to satisfy the needs for one of the two ever-growing cities. The local populace of both cities wanted to expand their agricultural activities onto the plain. In the early stages of the war between both cities, there was no clear victor, which allowed it to become a conflict that would be dragged out for years. It was therefore that the ongoing struggle between both parties allowed for further alliances to be established. There might have even been an overlap of the Messenian War between Sparta and Messenia, with the Messenian War happening within the same time period as the Lelantine War. During their fight with Messenia, Sparta also had a conflict with another city-state. This was the city-state of Argos. Argos had now joined their neighboring state of Aegina on the side of Eretria in the Lelantine War. With Argos being in conflict with Sparta, it was the latter who therefore joined the side of Chalcis as a counter-reaction in seeking allies for themselves. With the city-state of Samos already being part of the Chalcidic alliance, they therefore sent some of their troops to join forces with the Spartans marching against Messenia. This was not uncommon at the time, as Sparta would also hire Cretan archers to join their ranks when they felt this was necessary. The idea of these alliances being formed in this manner is further strengthened by another conflict which took place between Miletus and the island of Melos. While Melos had ties with the Spartans and Miletus supporting Eretria against Chalcis, which was considered another push for the Spartans to join the consortium of city-states on the side of Chalcis. With Euboea being one of the leading regions in ancient Greece in this time period, it was not surprising to find that both cities had lots of different alliances across the Greek mainland. As the Lelantine War continued, this ever-growing web of alliances resulted in another series of connected skirmishes across the Greek world. Looking at the west, it was the Corinthians who had sided with Chalcis that managed to remove Eretrian colonists from Corcyra. Chalcis itself drove away the Megarians from Sicily. Allies of Eretria, known as Miletus and Megara, on the other hand, managed to colonize the best locations on the Bosporus. Although many conflicts between the different city-states might have found their origin in choosing a side during the Lelantine War, the allies of Chalcis and Eretria mainly fought these battles within their own territories. In the meantime, the tensions between the two main protagonists reached boiling point when the Eretrian town of Lefkandi was completely destroyed by Chalcis. Both cities now met once again on the Lelantine plain. Hoplites were forming the bulk of both armies, reinforced by cavalry and some chariots. In true hand-to-hand combat, it was the infantry from Chalcis who were superior to the infantry from Eretria. However, the latter of the two had the far better cavalry. Although not many allies fought truly side by side with either of the two cities that started this widespread conflict, on the day that decided the outcome, it was the Thessalian cavalry that turned out to be too much for Eretria. At first, it was just Chalcis and Eretria that both gave the signal, and armies on both sides started to move forwards towards each other. Soldiers marching forward side by side, keeping a tight battle formation, ready to fight for what they believed was rightfully theirs. The lack of ranged units was not by coincidence. It was not uncommon for such battles to be fought in melee combat, only because these Greek warriors believed it was more honorable that way, instead of trying to kill your opponent from afar. With the infantry on both sides fighting hard to gain the upper hand, at first the Eretrian cavalry does all within its power to turn the tide of the battle. But just when it seems there might be a chance to defeat Chalcis, reinforcements arrive on the field. Thessaly has decided to aid Chalcis, and this was not expected by the Eretrians. They had been held in reserve and had gone completely unnoticed. Once the Eretrian front line is being overwhelmed by this additional threat, the soldiers can't hold on any longer. Eretria retreats back to its city. Although Chalcis is the victor in battle, both cities have lost greatly in the end. The once leading region of Euboea had now become a shadow of its former self. The cost of war had been high, and the impact now becomes visible for the entire ancient Greek world to see. The economic and political importance was no longer there for both Chalcis and Eretria, which resulted in Corinthian vase painting now becoming dominant for trading, with vases and their artwork being an important part of the ancient Greek culture. This was a big blow for both cities from a financial perspective. Furthermore, it were now the more prominent cities on the west coast of Anatolia that took over the leading role of further colonization efforts by the Greeks. Both cities of Chalcis and Eretria entered a stage of decline, which would see them becoming easy prey in future conflicts. The Lelantine War had been fought, but at what cost?